as religion. But a lot of other institutions fared far worse. Confidence in Congress stands at 8% and just 26% for the presidency. Also on the low end of the scale are big business, big tech, and big journalism. Americans have the most confidence in small business and the military. Michael Harrington, SRN News.
Residents of Illinois can now change the gender listed on their birth certificate a lot more easily. Under a new law that went into effect July 1st, people can swap their gender by simply signing a statement affirming their so-called gender identity. Up till now, residents of Illinois who wanted to live as the opposite sex would have to provide certification that they had undergone a sex change operation before being able to alter those documents. This is SRN News. Texas Senator John Cornyn says a downturn in illegals being apprehended at the southern border is likely to change.
My own view is this is not likely to last long, this lull, but it's long enough for some of the mainstream media to accept what the administration is selling, which is that their new border policy is solving the problem.
Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn says President Biden's age has quickly become a factor in his public appearances.
He just looks like an old guy that is not able to get his act together. And I think this is why you're seeing the conversation change. And Democrats in growing numbers are encouraging him to not run.
Senator Marsha Blackburn was interviewed this week on the Salem Radio Network. More details at srnnews.com.
The following program is sponsored by the law offices of Patrick L. Smith. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. Get ready with your legal questions and call Patrick now. 877-943-9673. Again, that's 877-943-9673. The law office is open. And now your host, Patrick Smith.
Good morning, Central Florida. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, and I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith, and we'll be with you the next hour to answer all of your legal questions. Give us a call now, 877-943-9673. That music's so dramatic, so somatic and dramatic. 877-943-9673. I looked up on, what's that online platform, Peter, where you can hire a professional to do voiceover work for you?
Oh, it's like Stop 5 or something like that.
Yeah, so I looked up to see if James Earl Jones was on there because I thought that would be a really cool named and voice to have Darth Vader do our... Anyway, we're here to answer your legal questions. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm Attorney Patrick Smith. Today is Saturday, July 15th. The number to be part of our show, 877-943. 9673 877-943-9673. Today's show, we are dedicating it to the law and mental health and some of the issues related to mental health issues as it relates to Florida law as it currently stands. But first, a little background, okay? During the Age of Enlightenment, attitudes towards mentally ill people began to change, and it came to be viewed as a disorder that required compassionate treatment that would aid in the rehabilitation of the patient. This is according to an online Wikipedia source. In the United States, the erection of state asylums began with the first law of the creation of one in New York, passed in 1842. The Utica State Hospital was opened approximately in 1850. The creation of this hospital, as of many others, was largely the work of a woman known by the name of Dorothea Lindy Dix. By the end of the 19th century, national systems of regulated asylums for the mentally ill had been established in most industrialized countries. In the 1940s, we started seeing mass amounts of exposed abuse within the psychiatric institutional system by civilian public services. Eleanor Roosevelt, impressed by the chances in the mental health system because of the sponsor of the National Mental Health Foundation, worked to advance reform and humane treatment for patients. Large-scale closures of the state-run psychiatric hospitals, what came to be referred as insane asylums, usually on some modern ghost hunting show, thanks in part to movies as well, began in the 1980s. By 2015, none of these institutions existed. With the shift from seeing people as mad and, quote, lunatics, there was a need to deinstitutionalize with these mental illnesses, but we overcorrected and left a hole in available resources. So gaps exist now between state sanctioned and funded in-home services, short-term residential treatments, support, acute hospitalization, and of course, good old-fashioned jail or prison or incarceration. They will pay for long-term institutional care in the criminal justice system. However, there's a lack of funding and programming to tackle the problem at a state level to keep it from becoming an issue for the criminal justice system. State hospitals began to realize that individuals probably could do well in the community, and it is well intended, but what I believe happened over the last 50 years is that there is such an evaporation of psychiatric therapeutic spaces that now we lack sufficient number of psychiatric beds. And this is according to Here and Now's Jeremy Hobson. He goes on to say, a concerted effort to grow community-based care options that were less restrictive grew out of the civil rights movements. And a series of scandals due to lack of oversight in psychiatric care. While those efforts have been successful for many years, a significant number of people who require structured inpatient care can't get it, often because of funding issues. This is according to Dominic Sisti, director of Scattergood Program for Applied Ethics of Behavioral Health Care at the University of Pennsylvania. The percentage of people with serious mental illnesses in prisons rose from 0.7% in 1880 to 21% in 2005, according to the Center for Prison Health and Human Rights. Many of the private health hospitals still in operation do not accept insurance and can cost upwards of $30,000 a month. Our research actually showed they can go as high as $45,000 a month, by the way, for many low-income patients. Medicaid is the only path to mental health care, but a provision in the law actually prevents the federal government from paying for long-term care at the institution, according to Sisti. In order to bridge the gap between hospitals and expensive community-based care options, Sisti argues for a continuum of care that ranges from outpatient care and transitional type housing situations to inpatient care. So all that is to say, what we have left now with regard to the law and mental health are bookends. So the bookends here are, if there's a major medical emergency with regard to your mental health, there is the ability to get something called a Baker Act for, emergency intensive short-term care. And then, of course, if you happen to commit a crime, they're happy to welcome you in our criminal justice system and provide care in that scenario. The gap occurred when the mental health hospitals, like we said, more colloquially called the insane asylums, were closed in the 80s. And let's agree they needed to be closed for a lot of the atrocities that they were perpetrating on these poor patients. But what didn't happen was some sort of reopening of an institution that could fill the vacuum and provide the care that these patients needed. So now we have this big gap between, an emergency short-term intensive treatment and long-term incarceration once you've committed a crime, nothing in between. And there are lots of examples, and there are many thousands of families suffering from loved ones with mental health issues and disorders. And it is a situation where my heart goes out to them, because I feel like the people out there who suffer from mental health often can't champion for themselves. So they need others to champion for them, and including their family. So we have one such example with us here this morning in studio. Ladies and gentlemen of the Attorney Patrick Smith Show, I'm proud to introduce Miss Leanne Deppa. Leanne, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Patrick. Thank you for having us here.
Of course, it's an honor. So, Leanne, I guess, like I said, in a couple of minutes, just give us sort of your family's story with regard to mental health.
Okay. So, my husband and I, we were led to adopt our son through adoption, and we've spent years dealing with mental health. My son has autism. He's considered a level 3, which needs significant support. And we brought him into our home through foster care. And we adopted him at the age of 2. He struggled early on in preschool, and we even tried kindergarten, where the environment was just too noisy and too busy for him. He just did not flourish in that environment. We decided to homeschool him, And through homeschooling, he did pretty well. But again, we were constantly there to watch over him and to provide support, especially when it came to being in those type of environments. We went through some family crisis in 2017, and we had to start putting him on some medications that we were able to avoid previously. During that time, with the medications, we could never quite get the right combination of medications, and this required frequent Baker Acts in order to try to get to a point to where we could have a longer stay in a hospital to try to get it right. We had sent him to a behavioral hospital. Unfortunately, Florida didn't have anything here, so we had to send him to South Carolina, and we were hoping to get a medication wash at that time. And then that's kind of when COVID hit, and everything went crazy. The hospital was in constant crisis with having people out with COVID. The facility had COVID, where they had to keep the clients separated from each other. And it also affected my husband and my ability to go and travel and see him and spend time with him, which would have been part of the process. So that same year, my husband had a heart attack, and that also affected our ability to spend more time with our son. And it led to us needing to choose a group home for him in Florida so that he could be provided care for while our family was getting through the whole COVID crisis, my husband with his heart attack. And that's kind of what brought us here today to what's going on with our family. I did not feel comfortable with having homeschooled him all these years for him to be in the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
But we were kind of forced to place him in the public school
So I can't help
system.
notice when you mentioned homeschooling, Brendan, you sort of lit up a little bit. So, and you're smiling now.
Sure.
So tell me, what was it like? How long did you homeschool Brendan, and what was Brendan like as a homeschool student?
We started homeschooling him when he was in kindergarten, and he was, he was great. He loved spending time with me. That when we were driving in the car, I would put on CDs so that he could listen to like skip counting and learning the states and capitals. And he did really well. He really enjoyed it. He, he was eager to learn. But again, I knew his limitations, and I knew that he needed to be around other people and be incorporated into busy, noisier environments. But at the same time, having me there to support him. So, I enrolled him in some co-op classes, but I always made sure who was teaching, what children were in there, and that I was close by to provide support when needed.
So were you at all concerned over the appropriateness of Brendan's educational options prior to the incident that occurred?
Yes, I was. That when we first placed him in the group home, I was very concerned when I heard that he was going to be placed in public school, but I was told that there really was no other choice.
Right. And this is part of the gap we're talking about, where there are these bookends and there's really nothing in between to mind that gap. So 877-943-9673. That's your number to be part of today's show. Call in with your legal question, or if you want to talk to us about mental health and the law and how it relates. Maybe you've had a family situation where mental health and the law have collided with your life and you want to share that story. You're welcome to call in today or call in with any of your legal questions. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. And again, you can email your questions directly to me, Patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. Patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com, or give us a call now. We're live and local, open studio lines, 877-943-9673. You're listening on one of 15 stations that we're on currently, so we'd love to talk to you today. 877-943-9673. So, Leanne, this is not something that the state can solve overnight. I wish it was. I wish we could snap our fingers right now and have this problem all better. But like you and I were talking before we went on the air, and this is sort of kickstarting a dialogue that hopefully is going to crescendo in real legislative change for the state of Florida to bring relief to families like yours and bridge this gap. As far as first steps, in your mind, as a parent of a child with special needs, what would you say the best first case scenario or the most important change, if you could pick one and have it be in effect today, you could just snap your fingers and make it so, what would that change be?
I think I would like to see that the state recognize whenever there's a family in crisis, the supports that are needed, that that there's more communication between the treating psychologist or the treating psychiatrist in the hospital environment with the community treating psychiatrist.
So you think there's a lack of communication is what I hear you saying?
Yes, that in all the stays for my son, there was limited communication between the hospital and his treating psychiatrist. And so when we wanted medication changes, we weren't always able to get the best change for him, because frequently when he would get out of the hospital, there was a need for another change, that the medications that were provided in the hospital were not a good match for him.
Well, and you mentioned earlier about kind of guessing at the medications. And in our research, that's something they refer to as the medication roulette.
Mhm.
We'll try this and see if it works. How frustrating must it have been if you found a combination of medications that was successful, and then to have something occur where he's in a different facility and they all of a sudden reassign his medications unilaterally because of a lack of communication?
It was more than that. It was that for each medication that he was put on, there are side effects. And so each time he would get put on a new medication, it ended up being a whole new cocktail of medications because of trying to fix the one medication side effects. So it got to a point to where we did not know what was working and what wasn't working. And the biggest thing that I really wanted was to start over, because it's very hard to manage in the home environment. But when you're on 5-6 medications, and some of these are some heavy duty medications, it's hard to know what to start taking them off of, because you don't know what kind of side effects are going to come up.
Yeah, because some of these medications you have to titrate off. You can't simply stop the medication. Now, you've been out there as a champion for your son, and I applaud that. And I think that it's wonderful. And you've actually reached out to some state senators on your own and some other advocacy groups. What's been the general tone and reception to you beating the drum for change?
I have had very positive reception, that most people I've talked to feel like our case can be the pivoting point for change, that they want me to get out and speak about what's going on and what we can do as a state to make things better for the most vulnerable population.
Well, that's why when you reached out to me, I mean, we got connected through a great mutual. Do you mind if I say who connected us?
I don't mind.
Okay. Great gentleman down at Landmark Baptist Church in Haines City, Dr. Earl Lee, connected us. And when you reached out and told me the story, I said, whatever I can do. And this was the most appropriate thing I thought I could do to support the change that needs to occur in this state. So again, thank you for coming on the show today. Got some calls getting queued up. If you want to be part of the show, 877-943-9673. That's your live and local number, 877-943-9673. And again, to reach me at the office during the week, we get lots of people requesting that I give out the office line more. So to fulfill that request, here you go. The office line, 877-754-6764. I'll repeat that again. The office line to schedule your appointment with me, Attorney Patrick Smith, or to book us for a speaking engagement if you have a club or group that would like us to come out and present. That office line, 877-754-6764. But we want to talk to you today live in studio. That number, 877-943-9673. Give us a call now. We're live and local, or email me your question, Patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. All right, let's go to Ashley. Ashley, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Ashley. How can we help you today?
Well, I just wanted to add that my husband and I, we own 3 intensive behavior group homes, and they're designed for individuals such as Leanne's son. I know that there's been mention of the criminal system and placing them in psychiatric hospitals, being under Baker Act and things in that nature. But unfortunately, they just don't have the resources for long-term sustainability like intensive behavior group homes. With our facilities, we have around-the-clock psychologists, doctors, staff that are 24/7 that can provide the care. And we work on goals that are specific to each resident specifically. We also take in the ones that come from prison or sitting in prison or jail, because there are times where people with mental health, they commit crimes, and they should not be treated in the same manner in which somebody like you and I, who don't have mental health diagnosis, should be treated.
Well, Ashley,
for instance,
a point I want to make to
Mhm.
that, and then a question. So our law does recognize that. When you look at the statute is Florida Statute 921, which has the sentencing guidelines. They actually take a nod and a look at someone's mental capacity, whether or not they could appreciate that they were committing a crime, whether or not they suffer a mental illness that's non-drug related. And those are called mitigating circumstances. So the law acknowledges that, but notice where it acknowledges it. It acknowledges it in the sentencing phase. So I'm saying, and I hear what you're saying, is there's a need to acknowledge it earlier before we get to the sentencing of someone who has a mental illness and has unfortunately committed a crime. But what I hear you saying is you agree with us that there needs to be some change.
Absolutely. And just to touch on the public school system, we have clients that go to the public school system because by law, they're allowed to go to school until they're the age of 22, and they go into these special programs. However, that doesn't mean that the individuals caring for them on a day-to-day basis are trained in the manner in which intensive group home agencies or other agencies are trained. Triggers, for instance, okay? You can do, say, or even look at an individual a certain way or too long, and it can be a trigger for them, which then creates a domino effect. If you don't know these things, or you don't have the special education and ability to treat them, you could set them off and not even be aware that that's what you're doing. We have behavioral analysts that are on staff 24/7. These facilities don't shut down, and the state does provide the funding for it. Now, there are some things we can go into that, a much longer conversation, but we need to look at these individuals in the beginning before it gets to a point where they are committing a crime or being stuck in a psychiatric hospital or deemed crazy. They're just individuals that need a little bit more special attention and special care. And there are facilities out there that can do that. And I think in Leanne's situation, an intensive behavior group home that can provide that 24/7 support and be catered around him specifically is the direction, that our state needs to start looking at as an option, more frequently.
So, Ashley, I'm going to give you a comment here from Dr. Lerner at Stony Brook University before I turn it over to Leanne to get the last word with you. And Dr. Lerner is a professor there, and he's a professor of clinical psychology, psychiatry, and pediatrics. And he says, as a scientist, I find it crucial to have the data about criminology and mental health so that we can contend with it. He said we can include in it educational strategies and make law enforcement aware of certain risk factors. So I think it's useful. He goes, however, on the other hand, I'm wary of the effect of focusing on crime and specifically stigmatizing autism spectrum disorder or any particular disorder. He said the data collection needs to be broader in general. And he says the worry is about, rather than focusing on autism and criminal behavior, why not focus on the factors such as profound isolation and loneliness, that's a direct quote, which can affect anyone and the relationships to crime. The more supportive and inclusive our community can be, the better. So I see them saying it's more about data collection But it seems like, since the 80s, we've sort of taken this ostrich approach to it, that it's just not there. We got rid of these bad things called mental hospitals or insane asylums. So that was good, sort of patted ourselves on the back, and then never really did anything to address the ongoing issue. What are your thoughts on the first step towards a solution?
I think we just, as a society, need to stop looking at individuals with mental health concerns as a negative. The number of individuals with mental health issues is growing. That's a fact. But instead of making it a negative, if we start working on it and addressing the issues and not making these people feel so isolated, like there's just something wrong with them, I think it can start the healing process. Now, will some individuals ever be what society considers normal? Absolutely not. But can we prevent the criminal activities or any type of activity that could lead to criminal? Absolutely, we can. But it's all geared towards having the proper education, attention, funding, and professionals around those individuals to start normalizing it, to say, okay, we have an issue here. We need to make sure the medications are working. And I do think we need to start from the beginning. We can't wait until an event has occurred and then just say, oh, this person's crazy, they need to go into the criminal justice system, or they need to be locked away.
Yeah. And what I hear is,
let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, we have to recognize, first of all, there's a problem. And we have to get rid of this stigma that we're not allowed to talk about mental health. We talk about people battling other illnesses like cancers and things of that nature. And for whatever reason, mental health issues tend to be shunned, I think. And I don't know if it's a societal thing or whatever the reason is. But that needs to be overcome, first of all, and admitting there's a problem. And I think you're right. I think that's when we can address the solutions. But I did promise Leanne. Leanne, any thoughts or follow-up questions for Ashley?
Ashley, I just want to thank you for sharing that intensive behavior group homes are an extremely important part of the solution. And I thank you for all that you're doing for your clients.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm always here for any support that, yourself, your family, or anybody that if they have questions or they just need some information. I'm always here as a resource. And, I pray for you and your family and any other family that's going through, tough situations, because mental health can be a very tough situation. And there's not always a final answer on how to resolve it, because you can't always resolve it.
Well, Ashley, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Bye-bye. All righty. Listening to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. For those of you just joining us, we are discussing the law and mental health and the gaps therein. We have special guest in studio, Leanne Deppa. 877-943-9673. That's your live and local to be part of today's show. Call in with your legal question. You can call in with your question regarding mental health and the law, or any legal topic at all. We're always here to help you every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Again, that toll-free studio line, 877-943-9673. And Ashley hanging up does open up a studio line if you've been trying to get in, 877-943-9673. Next, we're going to go to Lynn. Lynn, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. How can we help you today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am very invested in this conversation because I'm a pediatric occupational therapist myself.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in the trenches with these families. And it just mortifies me to think that some of my patients, as they get older and they go through the teenage years and the hormones are going crazy and they make a bad choice, or their central nervous system gets hijacked when they get upset over something, and then they can't stop themselves when they get all wound up. They go from 0 to 100 in seconds, and they make a terrible, terrible mistake. And then they're going to be sentenced and tried as an adult and then put away for 30 years. I just don't understand how this could possibly be fair or right.
Well,
and then okay, go ahead.
Before you go on, I want to circle back to something. Since you are in the trenches, and thank you for your service, you said as a pediatric occupational therapist.
Yes.
Okay. So since you're in the trenches, as you described, you have a unique perspective, Lynn, and I want to pick your brain for this. Give the state of Florida a grade in terms of what we're doing to support those with mental illness between, Baker Acts and incarceration. A through F system. What's our grade?
probably an E.
An E? That bad?
It's not good. No, it's
I
not good.
I was
There's no
prepared for
real
an F. I
support.
did. All right. So, all right, you were going to go on with another thought. Lynn, go ahead.
So my question is, I've been following this through Flagler Live, and how can they, when he's 17, when this crime happened, how could he be tried as an adult? And even if he turns 18 when the trial starts, can he still be, it doesn't make sense to me, especially when his emotional and social skills he's like a 5-year-old.
Yeah, we're gonna.
How is the legal system working with that?
Yeah, we're gonna stay away from commenting on anything that's an ongoing subject matter for investigation. But you're right. It is a really interesting question, Lynn. But we're not going to provide any commentary on that. So, any other questions or thoughts for us?
Well, just that we do need to overhaul in Florida these residential facilities and stuff. We need to make them more accessible. They need to build thousands of them because we have an epidemic like never seen before with it's like 1 in 20 to 1 in 25 boys are in the spectrum. And it's like 1 in 40 girls.
Well, you heard during my monologue at the top of the show, I don't know if you heard it, Lynn, but we were talking about how in prisons, in the 1800s, the prison population that had a mental health diagnosis was 0.1%. And by 2005, it was 21%. So almost a quarter of the prison population. And that's, staggering. I mean, of course, there are going to be critics who say, well, yeah, the technology at detecting mental illness got better, too. So there probably was higher than 0.1% back in the 1800s. Nevertheless, that doesn't justify ignoring it today. So I agree with you. And I think that we need more help. So there's a solution out there. And I think it starts with the government. And I think it starts with our local politicians making room in Florida's budget to support aid for these individuals who, like I said, can't go out and champion for themselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why, for so long, this has been brushed under the rug. Because you say, well, why haven't the families been doing more? Well, they have been doing it, but they've also been providing care for their loved ones. I mean, that's a full-time job a lot of times, let alone championing and basically lobbying Congress for a political change. So I said we can do our part here and start that dialogue as best we can on our show. And Lynn, we certainly appreciate what you do as a pediatric occupational therapist, and we appreciate you calling into the show.
Thank you.
All righty. Have a great day, Lynn.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
All righty. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. For those of you just tuning in, today we're talking about the law and mental health. We have special guest in the studio, Leanne Deppa. And if you have a question, feel free to give us a call now. 877-943-9673, or you can email me, patrick@attorneypatricksmith.com. Leanne, before we go to Diane, who's our next caller, did you have any comment you wanted to add based on what Lynn called in with the first part of her call?
I think occupational therapy services for children on the spectrum is so important, and early intervention is extremely important. We had some of that for my son. I'm an occupational therapist myself, and between my knowledge and the knowledge of several wonderful therapists, it was working well in the home.
Yeah. So you're making a difference out there, Lynn. You and all the other Lyns of the world listening, thank you for what you're doing. So 877-943-9673. Give us a call now. And like I said, Lynn hanging up does open up a line for those of you trying to get in. I see you. Keep trying. Brian will get to you. 877-943-9673. Diane, congratulations on getting through the phones this morning. How can we help Diane today?
Hi, I'm calling in relationship to the subject of, that y'all have been speaking about. I have a mentally ill son. He's schizophrenic. He became schizophrenic at 19, and he's going to be 53 this year. Wow. And I have been taking care of him all of this time. So, in my home. So I was a radiologic technologist for 33 years, so I was in the medical field. And when he became ill, I was, not embracing natural medicine as I do now. And that has been what has helped him the most. I had a situation where I became, I had breast cancer, and I went to a nutritionist. I learned about how to become well and in good health. And so when my son became ill, I found a book on orthomolecular psychiatry.
Mhm.
And I called the hospital where Dr. Hoffer was working, and asked a lot of questions and got some answers. And of course, I read the book. And that directed me into how I have helped my son over the
Well,
years.
Diane, you're going to win the
Um,
Caller of the Day award so far for bringing up orthomolecular on a Saturday morning
Psychiatry,
at about
yes.
8:37 a.m. So well done. And yeah, but hey, Diane, can I tell you something?
Sure.
All right. I don't know why, but I just feel the need to tell you that I really feel like you need to hear your son's very lucky to have such a great mom. And
Thank you.
and I think that too many people who are caring for those with mental health issues don't hear that enough. And it's one of
Thank
those
you.
things that the toll that it takes on the family, the family often internalizes it. They sometimes blame themselves. So anyway, I just feel like you need to hear your son's lucky to have you, and you sound like a great mom. But Peter the intern's ears perked up when you said natural medications. So I know
Yes,
he
sir.
wants me to follow up on that. What do you mean? Do you mind unpacking what you meant by natural medications? Because I have a feeling I know what he's thinking, and I got a feeling that's not what it is. So will you tell us what you meant by natural medications?
Sure. My son, when he first became ill, we were, my ex-husband, his dad, and I were at a loss what to do. So we found a clinic in our town that we took him to, and they, of course, started him on an antipsychotic, which he is still on. But they also recommended, a group home in another city in the state. I'm in Florida.
Mhm.
And which we said, oh, okay. So we took him there, and I cried all the way home when I had to leave him there. I was so upset at the
Yeah.
situation I saw there. It was horrible. And so my mother, who was living with me too, and I would go up every weekend. I was still working full time at that point, and visit him and make sure things were okay. Well, they changed him to another facility in a close by city, and they over medicated him. Every time I would go see him, he looked like a zombie. No expression on the face, no communication, and it was just so disturbing. So they called me one day saying, "Oh, Jason had a seizure," and I said, "I'll come up as soon as I can."
How
Get off
far?
work.
How far was that drive for you that day? How long was the drive?
Oh, well, I'd say 100 miles.
So that was the longest 100 miles you've ever driven, I'm guessing.
Yes, sir.
I can only
So
imagine.
they were treating him. He had fallen and hit his head and had a gash in his head. And anyway, this happened another time, one more time. And I said, no more. So I went up and picked him up, took him out of the facility, brought him home. I started lowering. He was on 600 milligrams of this antipsychotic. And no wonder he was having seizures. But, that's the way they did things to keep them in control, and that's the only thing they knew to do.
Well, so they eradicated the bad behaviors or the symptoms,
Behavior,
but they also
yes.
eradicated his personality, it sounds like, too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, Diane,
So I brought him home.
You brought him home.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's where I was taking it. And what happened next? You brought him home and?
Well, I started lowering the dose. And as I said, I embrace functional medicine or alternative medicine. And that from my time when I had a situation where I found out that the approach of alternative medicine worked. Conventional medicine I worked in for years and years, as I said, and it has its place. Most it has its place in so many ways. But when it comes to mental health, I think it is so important for people to find out. I took Jason to a holistic psychiatric nurse. She did wonderful, wonderful tests that none of the conventional doctors would ever do. And it opened a whole realm of good things that you can do naturally to give your child or your person that you're taking care of or know that is mentally ill.
Well, there's nothing you wouldn't do.
Huge.
Yeah, there's nothing you wouldn't do for a child. And you know, the Churchill quote that I love is, "To change is to improve, to change often is to perfect." And good for you for saying, look, I'm going to question a lot of these things because it's clearly not working for my son. And I'm going to keep trying different things until I find something that works. So do you mind sharing specifically which natural treatments are producing the biggest successes for Jason?
Okay. I went to many conferences. I started working in a pharmacy. I was laid off from my job because the practice was sold where I worked. And I started working in a pharmacy with the nutritionist I had known. And I went to all these conferences. I started studying the natural approach or alternative medicine. And I found companies that had nutrients that were professional, and they were not something you'd walk into Walgreens or CVS and buy. They were something that really worked. And I give him to this day a product from a company that manufactures in Orlando. A PhD started this company. He worked, and this product has saved Jason because I use it on a regular basis. He knows where it is. He gets it when he starts having an issue, when he knows that he's not feeling the way he should. And he also goes, because he is learning disabled, which made it even more difficult. He was diagnosed at age 5 with a learning disability. He never graduated high school. He was in summer school every year. But beside that, this company had a product that addressed his issues, and he to this day uses it. And I have him down just 100 milligrams of the antipsychotic now.
Well, it sounds like Jason's doing really well now.
Yes, sir.
Well,
yes,
praise God for that. So, Leanne, any comments or thoughts, questions for Diane?
Diane, thank you for sharing that. I would love to get information on the product that you're using.
Okay. If you want to, let's see.
I can have you put back on hold, Diane, if you don't want to give it out over the air. If you want to just give it to producer Yumiko, she can take down the information and pass it off to Leanne.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Leanne, anything else?
No, thank you so much, Diane, for calling in and sharing with us about Jason. I wish your son and you the best.
Thank you. And I wanted to share this because I know some people that have struggled, and all of the states in this country need to address mental health. It is so far behind.
I agree. Diane, thanks for having the bravery to call in. And again, thanks for being such a great mom to Jason.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
You have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye. All righty. Diane hanging up, opens up the phone line. 877-943-9673. 877-943-9673. And this is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. I'm your host, Attorney Patrick Smith. With me, special guest, Leanne Deppa. The office line, I did promise it one more time. For those of you who want to schedule an appointment in our Sun City Center office, Sarasota, Clearwater locations, 877-754-6764. Again, that toll-free office line, 877-754-6764. Email me, Patrick, at attorneypatricksmith.com. So it seems, Leanne, there's lots of support out there. I mean, so far we've already had an occupational therapist call in. We had another mother of a son with special needs call in, and this is what we got a sense of in doing prep for the show, is that there is an overwhelming sense of agreement and sympathy and support for these changes. So how does that make you feel hearing callers like that?
I think it's wonderful that people are brave to call in and to share their experiences, and give options that the state needs to look at.
Well, and what I like hearing is a success story, like Jason. Where a
Absolutely.
mom had the bravery to say, I'm going to try something different, and it worked. And, I mean, may we have more Jason-like stories in the future because of hopefully some of these changes in the state laws that are going to occur. So, all right, next we're going to go to Ryan in Largo. Ryan, welcome to the Attorney Patrick Smith Show.
Hey, good morning, Patrick. How are you?
I'm great, Ryan. What's going on?
So I actually am dealing myself right now with, I think is what is called mental illness. I mean, how do you define it? I just started going through it, about a year ago. And it happened in a situation when I was driving for work, and I kind of had like a split blackout and came right back to while I was driving on I-4. And ever since that day, I just haven't been the same.
All right.
And I've been seeing.
I was going to ask if you have a doctor. You have a physician? You don't have to say the name. I'm just curious if you have a physician.
I do.
Okay.
I started seeing my primary about it. It got to the point where he recommended, because he tried me on sertraline first.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work. So basically, when they put me on sertraline, that put me in the dirt. That was the first time in my life that I got to a point where I had suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I immediately stopped taking it. He switched me to, I think it was called Wellbutrin. And the first day I started taking it, started doing the same thing that I was feeling. So I immediately called the helpline. They told me to stop taking it. Then they tried to put me on hydroxyzine. At that point, when that didn't work, I reached out and started doing self-medication.
Well, this is the medication roulette we were talking about earlier, Leanne, where you're just sort of you're looking at the symptoms and you're trying to treat them, and you're just sort of guessing at it. So you sound like you went through that, Ryan.
Oh yeah, and it got really tough for me. I mean, I got to a point where I would just lay on my couch and I wouldn't talk to anybody. And I'm a father of 3. I work 10 to 12 hours a day. I'm married. So I have a lot of responsibilities, and I don't have time to be sitting on my couch, thinking about what is going on, what's happening with me. Because this was all new to me. And to be honest with you, growing up, I was always the person when I heard about somebody with depression or anxiety, I said, what do you have to be depressed about? There's no reason to be depressed.
Yeah.
So this is all new to me, feeling these feelings. And I started self-medicating. I'm not going to lie. And I found a medication that actually helped my symptoms, right? And I was upfront and honest with my primary doctor about it. And I said, look, this is what I was taking. This is what I've been taking. Technically, I've been taking it illegally, but it's helping. When I take this pill as needed, it helps. And to this day, I still can't get help. Like I went, my therapist had to recommend me to see a psychiatrist, which I'm in the middle of doing right now. But they're so far backed out, I don't see my psychiatrist till the end of August.
Wow.
So I'm finding myself having to illegally self-medicate, which could ultimately end me in jail. Say I got pulled over and had one of these pills in my car with me,
Sure.
I could actually go to jail.
Yeah. Ryan, and I see in the call screen why you're calling in. So when we're finished with your call, I'll hand you back over to Yumiko, and we'll get your information and we'll do our best to connect you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What else did you want to add?
I'm curious. Is there, how do you know if you're dealing with mental health? Because the feelings I get are a lot in my head. And I get these feelings of dizziness, not in reality. I almost feel like I'm going to pass out kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And and sometimes, a lot of the times, I question myself, do you have a tumor in your head? Is something going on that's not mental illness? Because I never had this before, and I'm 37. This just started at the age of, say, 36.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be able to answer that for you, Ryan, but I'm not a licensed doctor. But you have one. So have you asked your physician this? What did your physician say, if you don't mind sharing?
My physician says he's not qualified. That's why he referred me to a therapist.
And that's why you're in this hold pattern while you get an appointment with the psychiatrist.
I got the appointment, but it's so far out.
Yeah.
you know, and at what point do you try to find other help?
Well,
Because
I
you
mean,
feel like you're not getting the help.
you could always try another psychiatrist. See if someone has something a little more available a little sooner. That would be an option, maybe. Call back your physician and say, hey, do you have another recommendation? Someone who's a little less busy can get me in sooner. Maybe see if they can, telehealth you a little faster as opposed to an in-person. I don't know. I think you just stay determined there, Ryan, and, keep at it until you get the answer you want.
Yeah, I agree.
But
And
Ryan,
I have, and it's just, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say, keep us posted, Ryan. Don't be a stranger to the show. Pop in every so often and let us know how you're doing. How old are your kids?
I have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 6-year-old.
You really ran the spectrum there, didn't you?
I did.
How many years you been married?
Actually, it's funny. I've only been married. October 30th will be 2 years, but we've been together 20.
Well, congratulations on having a wife and a beautiful family, Ryan. And you got a lot to celebrate there. And we appreciate you having the bravery to call in today. Just hold the line. We'll get your information and we'll do our best to get you connected. Okay.
Awesome. And again, thank you guys for everything you do.
Absolutely, Ryan. You have a great day. Okay. Alrighty. This is the Attorney Patrick Smith Show. Last few seconds we have left. Leanne, thank you so much for being here today. Leanne Deppa, thank you so much. Any parting words for our audience?
I just want to thank everybody for bringing attention, mental health, and let's work together to get our state to do a better job of providing the supports and services that the most vulnerable need.
Amen. That couldn't have said it better myself. The number for next week, 877-943-9673. To reach me at the office, 877-754-6764. This is Attorney Patrick Smith signing off saying God bless, stay safe, and go Gators.
Law offices of Patrick L. Smith. W282CI Tampa, W271CY Lakeland, W262CP Bayonet Point.
Online at letstalkfaith.com or listen on TuneIn and Odyssey.
Do you like to play games? Well, now you can play free at letstalkfaith.com. Just look for the Games banner or click the Games tab on the top menu. Doctors recommend playing word and trivia games to keep your mind sharp and have fun doing it. And right now, take our games mini survey by clicking the quiz tab on the menu, and you might win one of 3 $100 Amazon gift cards. Treat yourself to some fun and play a game right now at letstalkfaith.com.